Ladies and gentlemen, we are here with Mike Arturi. He is a drummer that has played with the Lovin Spoonful and Gary Lewis and Chuck Berry and Bo Diddley and all of these amazing artists. He's played with 10 different Hall of Fame, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame members. And he's a businessman, and he's also started a new school. Well, actually, it's been about 13 years where he's bringing school to children. He's helping. It's a nonprofit. If I've got this correct,
You're correct.
it's
Yes.
called the Universal Music Center. It's located up in Minnesota, and you're bringing music to children. So I really wanted, we played together in Gary Lewis and the Playboys. And, I know that you've got a lot of experience and, you were a guy that was always with the sage wisdom. When we'd be on the road, you'd always have a reassuring, it's not that bad. Don't worry about it kind of vibe. And so I thought you would be a great person to talk to, one, because of your playing experience and all of that you can give us on that. But then also, doing good, providing something good in your, as I would say it in my life, this is the back nine, and we're
hmm
probably the most productive we've ever been in our life at this point in time.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm farther in the back nine than you are. I'm in the second nine of the back nine. But no, you're absolutely correct. And first of all, thank you. Thank you. I'm so honored to be here. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And it's so great to see you, and hear your voice again, and I always found your guitar solos really inspiring, man, when we were playing together. I love the two twin reverbs tilted back, and yeah, we put some power into that music,
Yeah,
man.
yeah. That was when they used to let you do that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, that is that's where, we met, and we met the first time I played with you was actually on the audition at SIR in Nashville. You drove down from, I believe, Chicago,
Right. Yep.
and we actually played together at the same time. Can
Yeah.
you have any, give us something about that?
Well, what happened, an interesting thing happened with me with that, with auditions. When I got the call to audition for the Lovin Spoonful, I was at a point in my life where I was doing pretty well, man. I was settled. I had a ton of work in Chicago, um, married, had a family and stuff, and things were really going well. But you get those calls, and we're old fire horses. That
Yeah.
bell rings, and we got to go. um, but I said to myself, this was one time when it wasn't that I didn't care if I got it or not, but I knew I would be okay if I did not get it.
Yeah.
So I tried something that I hadn't done before. And that was, I went into those songs. They sent me seven songs. There are seven top 10 hits. And I learned those things. We both read and write music, so I charted those songs. I wrote drum charts, every single drum fill, every kick drum pattern, every hi-hat pattern. How were the drums tuned? What was his setups? I mean, I did a deep, deep dive into that stuff. And I went to the audition, and after the second song, I got the gig. Steve Booten
Wow.
turned around and gave me the gig.
Wow.
So when the Gary thing came up, I did the same thing. I just learned that stuff note for note from the drum parts on those records. And then, if you remember, the band he chose was the all the guys we auditioned with,
Yeah, yeah. I
Nick
think
and
I
Brian.
think yeah, I don't remember if Nick was playing with us at that moment or not. I don't remember.
No, he was.
He was.
Yeah,
Wow.
he was there. Yeah. So
I
it
was
was the four of us that he chose.
yeah. That's pretty incredible. I don't know, man. I really wanted to get that gig because I hadn't done a ton of road work. And I did the same thing you did. Man, I shedded that stuff, dude. I
Hmm.
was literally like doing, and here's the thing about that music is there were a lot more chord changes back there then in hit songs than there are now.
And those were well crafted songs.
Yeah,
Remember that song Green?
Leon Russell was
Yeah,
the producer and wrote some of that stuff, right? And
yeah, yeah. And yeah, those were not you know this Diamond Ring, somewhat predictable, but
yeah,
remember Green Grass?
yeah. Oh
You
yeah.
know, that was
All those little lines I had to play.
yeah,
You
yeah, like
couldn't
that
yeah.
kind of flamingo guitar or something.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that stuff had some meat on it, man.
Yeah.
And what I loved about Gary, man, that guy was there was no drama with him.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
just this is what I want. I'll never forget the first set we played. Remember that first gig? We were at a casino and the stage was behind the bar.
I
Remember that?
remember that.
Yeah. Odd, odd
Yeah.
casino. I had played there with the Spoonful before, it was just an
Yeah.
odd booking,
Yeah.
and the crowd was like right out into the slot machines and
Yeah.
stuff. And we drew a big crowd and all that stuff, and that's where they have their artists play.
Yeah.
So we did that first set, the very first set, we did two shows, and Gary comes up to me and he goes, "Way less fills." He said, like, okay, Gary, I got it, man.
Yeah.
And but he came up and told me that, and it
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
perfect because it was better than these
Yeah.
guys that like, he goes and bends your ear about it behind my back, and
Yeah.
you never know that you're not even making the guy happy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's what I loved about Gary.
Yeah. He would tell you pretty quickly, and you just go, okay, and because
Yeah.
I talk about it on my channel one time. We'd always have solos, and one time I got a little too fusion in my solo, and he said, "You played something weird in your solo. Yeah, don't do that." you know. And I knew, now I realize, man, it's in the framework of the 60s. I needed to stay stylistically in that framework.
Absolutely. And that goes for everything. I mean, look at all those big gigs you had, those big tours you did and everything. I mean, I'm sure you went in there prepared to play within the context of that music
Yeah.
and you get
Yeah.
the gig. And in your case, you got sounds you got to deal with, and styles. I did that with the Spoonful audition. I tuned those drums. Actually, I went in early and set the kit up just like Joe Butler would set his up. I tuned the drums like the records were, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Because these guys, they live this stuff, you
Yeah.
know. They
Yeah.
live those songs. Those songs are really important to them. That's
Yeah.
like part of their life,
Yeah.
and if you abuse that, and maybe not even intentionally, but by overplaying or trying to put your own 2 cents in this stuff,
Yeah.
I'm not going to play a better drum fill than Jim Keltner.
Yeah.
You know what
Yeah.
I mean? He's
Did Keltner play on some of that stuff?
Yeah, yeah. He was. That's how
Oh.
Gary was taking drum lessons from him at a
Yeah,
music
yeah,
store.
that's right. That's right. Oh, you're talking about the Gary stuff. I was kind of still
Yeah.
thinking about Lovin' Spoonful.
Oh no, no, that was Joe Butler on everything.
Okay.
That Joe
Wow.
Butler played drums on every single recording they did. All four of those guys played on every record.
Wow.
They were one of the only ones in the '60s that were able to do that. The
Yeah.
Byrds, all these other bands was the Wrecking
The
Crew,
Wrecking Crew.
and maybe
Yeah.
the guitar player and the singers.
Wow. That's something, man, because you're right. That didn't, unless you were the Jimi Hendrix Experience or Cream, a
Right.
lot of that stuff was the Wrecking Crew, you
Yeah.
know?
I mean, here we're talking about the music business, right?
Yeah.
There it is. There's a great example of it. Especially back then. It wasn't like it is now. Back then, you're paying X amount of dollars per hour for that studio.
Yeah.
And you got these guys that are going to knock this thing out. It's going to sound perfect. Let the guy sing it, so it's got the
Sound like an artist.
feel of
Yeah.
what they're going to hear live. And 3 hours done.
Yeah. I went back and listened right about 5 minutes before I turned this on and listened to a live performance of the Lovin' Spoonful from 1965.
Hmm.
And it took me back, man, because I'm seeing, the Fender, not combo amps, but the Fender stacks,
Yep.
and the old school drums, and just how lo-fi everything was, and everyone is into the music. There's nobody holding the phone up and
Right.
watching the show through their phone.
Yeah.
And I just went, man, can you just take me back there now?
Honestly, right? You know, um, the spoonful is an interesting thing, because uh, I could kind of loop my music school into this story. But sitting on the side of the desk I sit on now, what we have these students come in, right? And it's not only kids. Our youngest student now is like, probably 6 maybe, and the oldest is in his 80s. We have
Wow.
them at all points in between. So, but when these students come in, you can spot natural talent. It's really obvious. These kids come in, they have perfect pitch. You know, um, I got this one little guy plays drums. His name is Gavin Lindbeck, and he's a monster, man. He
Wow.
started when he was 11 years old. He's into like Slipknot and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
He could play with Slipknot.
Wow.
He's just naturally gifted, and so now he started taking guitar lessons, right?
Yeah.
And he finds this band out of Germany, some that like it's like,
Yeah, yeah.
but odd time signatures, all this
Yeah,
stuff.
sounds like Rammstein. Was it
Yeah, that's it.
Rammstein? Yeah.
That's the band. Yeah,
Yeah.
and he played this piece by them on guitar. He's had like 4 lessons, you know,
Wow.
and he's playing guitar all up and down the neck. So natural talent. So the
Wow.
Lovin Spoonful, this is funny, or this is interesting. Like, recently, we played on the site of the Woodstock Festival.
Yeah.
They have a museum there, and so we played in the museum, and John Sebastian showed up. This is the first time in 29 years he's come to a
Oh,
gig,
wow.
and he showed up, right? And so I was telling him, I was trying to say to him, John, this is my impression of the Spoonful, and knowing playing with the other 3 original members, they were all naturally gifted musicians. In the case of Jerry Yester, naturally gifted and schooled. He did all those string arrangements, and scored. He can score for an orchestra and all this
Wow.
stuff. But he's a brilliant, just music comes out of this guy's hands. You
Yeah.
know, Joe
That's
Butler.
the guitar player, right?
Well, Zal Yanofsky is the guy on the most of the records.
Okay. Okay.
Zal passed away in 2002,
Okay.
but I have a funny Zal story for you too, if you want to
Okay.
hear it. But Jerry took his place, and
Okay.
Jerry played piano on "Do You Believe in Magic?" And Jerry was in that circle all along.
Ah.
But Steve Boone, you know, weirdest bass player in the world, beautiful, plays all these phenomenal passing tones while keeping the root and fifth happening.
Yeah.
Natural musician.
Yeah.
Joe Butler, he's really not even a drummer. He plays drums, but he's a
Wow.
he's a musician. He's a singer. He's a
Wow.
guitar player. He plays chords on the guitar, but he writes. He can rhyme anything. Just and Sebastian, goes without
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah.
So I was saying that to John, and he was looking at me like, I never thought of that.
Yeah.
And so you bring those 4 guys together, and there you go. I mean,
Yeah.
you could talk about the Beatles. I mean, so how many other groups?
Yeah.
Um, so it's pretty
That
interesting.
that's amazing. And I'm John Sebastian is a guy that to me it's always fascinating when I would hear you talk about him because obviously as a kid, I'm a little bit younger and Welcome Back Cotter was a huge show when I was a kid
Hmm.
and hearing him sing Welcome Back, that voice, that just pure voice. And I
Yeah,
can remember talking to you about John Sebastian and you telling me that he had had some issues or something. What
back.
was going on with that?
Yeah, when we were playing together, he was really struggling with his throat. It's better now. It's not back to where it once was, but he's fine now. He sings great. Um, where it once was, he was 20 years old. So nobody sounds
Yeah.
like they were 20.
Yeah, yeah,
When they're
yeah, of
when they're
course.
80.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
but nobody knew. They couldn't figure it out. He had all the tests in the world, there was no nodes, anything. The only thing they could think of is he goes like this when he plays, you know.
Ah,
So they're thinking he might have pinched something or something like that, and it just
close
was too
off the
many,
air path.
yeah, too many years of that. Um,
Yeah.
but he's back, and interesting guy, man. His father was a symphonic harmonica player, and his
Wow.
father was touted as the greatest harmonica player in the world at one point. And
Wow.
he grew up in Greenwich Village. His mother was in show business. People would come to his house, Burl Ives, Woody Guthrie. All these people used to
Wow.
be in the Sebastian house, and he would go down to there's a I can't think of what it is. There's a square in Greenwich Village where that arch is.
Yeah.
And every Sunday, all these guys would come with guitars and conga drums and stuff. And he'd go down there. He had 12 harmonicas and a belt, across his chest,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
a guitar. And he played with whoever let him play.
Wow.
And he was cutting his teeth with cats, man, when he was a little guy.
Yeah.
So definitely a deep, deep, deep musician.
Yeah.
Phenomenal talent.
Yeah.
Nice
That's
guy, too.
yeah. He seemed like a nice guy, and that they had such a unique sound with him on the auto harp,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
And then it's Zahn, right, on guitar, who was like kind of like the wild man, it seemed like,
Yes,
right?
definitely, definitely.
He,
Zal's influences were Floyd Kramer. So his main influence was a piano player,
yeah.
and Chuck Berry.
Wow.
So those were Zal's influence. And well, as a guitar player, you could see how great this guy was. I mean, his fans were Eric Clapton, George Harrison. They were Zalianowski
Yeah.
fans.
And
You know,
he had a unique stage presence. Like he
yeah,
was mugging for the camera, and I was like, man, this guy, like if I was, in that time period, I'd want to be that guy because
yeah,
he's clowning, he's moving around, he's and you said those Floyd Kramers, those little two note kind of like things. It's like sounds like a Floyd Kramer riff,
yeah,
and
yeah.
it's man, I like I said, I wish we could go back, because there's so much trickery and fakery
Yeah.
now in live concerts. And I actually had a guy say, I mean, it's so entrenched now that I had a guy the other day, a troll, and he said, "Oh, what? You're against backing tracks now? WTF?" And I'm thinking, like, dude, you should be able to get on stage without backing tracks and sound good, right?
The Beatles sure did it.
Everybody did it until
Yeah,
now. And now, and man, it's at the point now where they're just going to roll the robots out.
yeah, yeah,
And the robots, because the robot's not going to get tired, the robot they can just push in the back of a trailer. And the songs are all going to be written by AI. The studio, well, look, dude, you can literally go now. There's a website, and I can type in, give me a song like the Lovin Spoonful with a complete arrangement and a male lead vocal, and the song needs to be called Lemon Sunshine.
hmm,
And you press the button, and you wait about 2 minutes, and it spits out the entire song, all the tracks, all the stems, so I can throw it in my DAW, mix it up, and put it out.
wow.
So think about that. Now it sounds fake. I mean but you know what? It's pretty gosh darn close. It's got a human vocal.
Hmm.
And
Incredible,
so
man.
and so here's the thing, man. Songwriters not needed. Studio musicians aren't needed. And pretty soon, when you're playing the backing tracks, so essentially they don't need to hire everything that's coming out of the speakers. They could just get a couple guys posing. Because
Yeah,
once they start putting more and more tracks into performance, there's less and less to do. And there's no room for improvisation because everything is tick, 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 tick,
yeah,
tick, tick,
yeah.
bling, tick, tick, tick,
Hmm.
bling.
Yeah, it's true. And I'll add something to that. in my work in education now, um, I run a music department for a Montessori school, and also I teach in a lot of schools, and I work with all kinds of different people with various challenges physically and mentally and stuff, and um, I'm finding kids to be like they're bored with everything. They're not impressed with anything. There seems to be no passion anymore, you know, and exactly what you're talking about. When we would get in the basement, you know, with our friends and start putting a band together and start writing original music. And you're all like, man, yeah, yeah, no, no, let's do this. Oh yeah, yeah, well, that sounds great. Let's record. And you're riding home in the car and you got it on 10, on the
Yeah.
radio, and you're like, you know, that's gone. They're bored with everything. You know, too instant. Too fast. Things are going too fast. Um, I don't know what to make of it, man. And we're not the only ones talking about this stuff.
Yeah.
Hey, another thing too. You talk about bands, right? Let's look at like Taylor Swift, right? Biggest star in the world, and I take nothing away from her. I don't know a ton of her music, but man, just from a business perspective, that woman is brilliant. I mean, but she's doing it, man. She's making it happen.
Yeah.
She's driving that ship. You know,
She's figured out how to she's found a audience segment that it is the I kind of call it the how to be nice about it. The dysfunction of the Caucasian female.
right on,
And it
man.
speaks to that.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're all dated multiple wrong guys, and
Yeah.
they all feel that they haven't been treated right.
Yeah.
And it's this camaraderie of the dysfunction. Now that's not unlike a rock band. Rock bands celebrate dysfunctional males. We're dysfunctional. We bounce from woman to woman and party too much. It's a similar thing, but she's
Not
found
us
that
though. Not you
niche.
and me.
Yeah.
Not you and me though.
Not you and me, but some guys.
Other guys. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, no, I agree. And um, what I was going to say too is, okay, so here she is with, those guys are probably making up north of 5 grand a week, in her
Yeah.
band, killer players, uh, dancers, all this stuff.
Yeah.
There's no band. You know what I mean? Who does she groove with? You know what
Well,
I
she
mean?
does have Paul Sidoti. You know him?
No.
He played with the Raspberries for a minute.
What?
Billy Sullivan and all those
Yeah,
guys. Well,
yeah.
they know Paul. I think Paul even briefly played with Gary Lewis, maybe one or two shows. He's a guitar player, and he has been in her band now. I mean, we're going on decades, right?
Yeah.
But from what I'm understanding, people are saying more and more that it's just so much backing tracks that the band's not really. I mean, look, the guy will have your signal at the board, but
Mhm.
everything is basically piped in, and they'll blend a little bit of the real guitar just to, kind of like putting a little salt and pepper on the top. That's
Mhm.
what I'm imagining they're doing.
Yeah.
That's what I'm imagining.
Well, let's go back to what we were talking about with the studios. Now this woman is packing these stadiums. They don't have time for mistakes. They don't have
No.
time for a bad night.
Yeah.
She must have enormous pressure on her. I mean, it's
Yeah.
still a human being.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and and those musicians and dancers too.
Right.
I mean, they're working. But
Yeah.
so they don't have time for any
Yeah.
mistakes.
Yeah. Yeah.
That show's got to go, man. And that thing's got to be exactly
Yeah.
the length it's going to be. And she probably
Yeah.
says the same thing night after night in
Yeah.
between songs. And all that
Yeah.
bit because
I know. I
money.
know. It's a business and it's a performance. But
Yeah,
give me the days of a band getting up there and just going for it
yeah,
any day of the week. I had some idiot say, Oh, Led Zeppelin always sucked live. What are you talking about? I'm like, dude, give me a friggin'
What?
break. Oh yeah, I mean, look, man, there's always one idiot, right? But man, I remember like because I never got to see Zeppelin. I was a little bit too young, to see that. But I remember when their 5 DVD box set came out, and I went and bought it. This was probably 15, 20 years ago. I went and bought it. I put it in the DVD player, and I started watching. And dude, it was 5 hours, and I literally was just glued to the thing, just like going, I can't believe that these four guys are making that, amazing sound and playing these amazing songs.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's raw, and yeah, it's edgy, and yeah, sometimes Jimmy Page is sloppy, but he's sloppy in all the right ways.
Yeah, yeah. They're coming back out. Did you know that?
What? No, that's AC/DC, bro.
No, well, maybe this is not true, but I saw it on Facebook that they have a studio album in the can and they're planning a tour.
No, I didn't hear about the tour, but they do have a documentary that's coming out. Robert Plant will not. He knows he's the guy that holds out and goes, I'm not going to do it
Hmm.
because he knows he can't be the golden god anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
Hey,
I
you
mean, I mean,
create
these guys
something,
are
yeah,
in their 70s, you
yeah.
know?
You create something when you're young, and unfortunately, you may be asked to keep repeating it.
Well, yeah, and that bugs me too. The people that you know, they put these guys down, because of the way they look now. They don't look like they looked on their album cover when they were 22 years old. And they go, "You're still at it. They're still doing it."
Yeah,
Well, why not? Why do you
yeah,
respect a doctor? That's
yeah,
70 years old and not a
yeah,
musician.
yeah,
How come a musician's not, 6 decades better
yeah.
now than he was when he made his
Yeah.
records?
Yeah. My
You know?
problem is the ticket prices then were $12, $15, or $8. And now when I got to see them and they're 70 years old, I got to pay $600. And
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 that's
I just
probably for
go,
nosebleeds. Yeah,
yeah, for nosebleeds. So
yeah,
for me, I'm priced out. I go, look,
right.
man, I saw you guys when you were 30 and you were still on the stuff. I don't need, I'm not paying, I'm not paying top dollar to see you kind of phone it in. No offense, but it's a different energy when you're 70 and you've got to go out there and kind of pace yourself than when you're 30 and you could die at any moment.
Yeah, I saw him live once, and it was so crowded. I saw him at this stadium where I was on the main floor, and it was flat,
Yeah.
and everybody first stood up, then they stood on the chairs, you know, and I couldn't see anything, and I tried to
Wow.
make my way up there, to at least get a glimpse of him, and I caught like a little tiny glimpse of him for a second
Yeah.
or two. Then a guy threw a firecracker off the balcony and it blew up in some guy's ponytail,
Oh my
so I was
God.
like, I'm out of here.
Those were
I'm
the
sick of
Wild
this.
West days of concerts. It was
Yeah,
different
yeah.
then.
Oh yeah, man. Yeah.
Soon as the lights went down, the smoke was lit.
Yeah.
It was the air that would be rich with the smell of rock and roll,
It was
and
fun, man. It was
it
it was great. It was so exciting, and you'd see these guys from the album covers, and hear them play, and it just, oh man, it
yeah,
was really inspiring. My guy was Frank Zappa,
yeah,
so I saw him probably, well, over 20 times,
wow,
and it was always jaw dropping, man. It was
yeah,
never bad, man. Just
wow,
unbelievable,
yeah,
and he was a guy that not only was a genius composer, but his guitars were all like,
oh
it
yeah,
looked like a Strat, but
yeah.
it only looked like one.
They
He
had
had like,
switches and yeah,
oh man, pickups in the neck,
yeah,
to where he could play like with his left hand,
yeah,
big rack behind him, that had a
oh yeah,
million sounds, and he had the best PAs. Back then, remember when bands would carry their own sound systems,
yeah, yeah,
he had the best equipment, everything, I mean, he was
yeah.
was meticulous on every
Yeah.
single thing, man.
And the best players.
Oh, geez, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. You
yeah,
always knew you were gonna the band was gonna be good if Zappa was if Zappa's name was on it.
absolute. That's where I got into Ansley Dunbar from
Yeah.
Live at the Fillmore East. Changed my life.
Yeah. Now you became friends with Aynsley, right? I mean, you
Yeah,
know him.
still am.
So
I,
what tell me what Aynsley Dunbar is doing these days.
well, he's I guess he's kind of semi-retired. You know, he's done very well with record royalties. He lives in Las Vegas. Has a very nice lifestyle. You know, beautiful house, cool cars. You know, the whole bit. And you know, he's just a legend. You know,
Yeah.
to me anyway. You know, and
Yeah.
he's he was Ainsley is rock solid. You know, when I the first time I met him, I had a Ludwig drum endorsement, right? And when I got the endorsement, they said, you know, any of the guys, you know, if you want to meet anyone, let us know. I said, there's only, and at the time they had Buddy Rich, they had Bonham, you know, all the, you know, I said, there's only one guy and it's Ainsley Dunbar.
Yeah.
Easy, piece of cake, you know. So I go to this venue in Indiana and he was playing with Jefferson Starship at the time.
Yeah.
And so I meet him, right? And I'm like just a basket case, you know, because
Yeah.
um, uh, we said hello to him in the dressing room for a minute or two, you know, and then Bill Ludwig said, you know, he's going to meet you in the bar, you know, afterward. And
Yeah.
I'm thinking to myself, yeah, right, you know, he's not going to be there, you know.
Yeah.
So I went into this bar and he wasn't there, you know, and I thought, oh
Yeah.
shoot, well, I understand, no big deal, you know.
Yeah.
But I'm walking out and here's this other club, right? As I'm leaving this hotel, so let me stick my head in here, you know. And I come in the doorway and there he is sitting in a booth facing the door, you know, with
Wow.
a gorgeous woman with him, right? And he was waiting for me. And I sat
Wow.
down, man, you know, and you know, there was a cover charge. I walked right past the guy. I was so
Yeah.
I was so excited, you know. So there was this one fill in this one song that he did, you know, and I'm blathering. I sit down and I'm like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and I'm like, hey man, you know, remember that fill? You know, and that's yeah, yeah, I remember. I said, what happened with that? How'd you do that? You know, he goes, I can't tell you, you know, and I'm thinking like, why? You know, he goes, all I do is react to music. I
Wow.
don't plan anything out. I just react to music. And Brad, now I've known this guy since 1979. Okay.
Wow.
We were close friends. You know, I mean, I've stayed at his house. He stayed at mine. You know, I
Wow.
sold his Porsche for him one time, you know, and we're really good friends. I talk to him
Yeah.
all the time, you know,
Wow.
and all through the years since then, and you know, we've gotten very relaxed, you know, at
Yeah.
times with
Yeah.
each other,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, and
Yeah.
um, and I'm thinking, I'll catch him now, you
Yeah.
know, and I'd ask him that question, and he says the same thing every
Wow.
single time, you know. I
Yeah.
just react to music. Um,
Wow.
now he knows what he's doing, you know. He could read and
Yeah.
write
Yeah.
music and stuff, you know, and he knows odd time signatures and stuff, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but his whole thing was he Joe Morello was his guy, you know.
Ah.
Aynsley was a jazz drummer in Liverpool, you know,
Yeah.
before Zappa discovered him, you know. And
Wow.
he played with the Mojos when he was 17 years old. Then he was with John Mayall. Um, he was with Jeff Beck. He was in the first Jeff Beck
Yeah.
group when it was Aynsley, Rod Stewart, Ron Wood, and Jeff Beck. That
Yeah.
was the first Jeff Beck band,
Yeah.
and they did an album. I can't remember what the record
Yeah.
was called,
Yeah.
but uh, you know, tons of enormous recording. He's on
Yeah.
41 gold and platinum albums.
Wow.
41, you know.
Yeah.
So, and through it all, he remains the same. You know, his
Yeah.
problem with Journey was that they got together and their creed when they got together was we're going to play, we're going to be players, we're going to go for it. You know,
Yeah.
and as they started to have success, and they brought what was that singer Steve?
Steve Perry.
Yeah, they brought him in, and all of a sudden he's like, no, 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 we got to do these things exactly like we recorded them. You know, and
Uh,
they were on the cusp of gigantic success, but
yeah.
he wouldn't conform. You know, he was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
that's not what this is supposed to be. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want to replicate my drum fills every
Yeah.
night. You know,
Yeah.
so he leaves. You know, and
Yeah.
he sticks to what he believes in, and that is that. And
Yeah.
I've played double drums with him. You know, he played in the when I lived in Chicago. He was playing at a festival when he was with Eric Burden, and just real nervously, you know, I'm like,
Yeah.
"Hey man, you want to warm up before the gig?" You know, he goes, "Yeah, yeah, sounds good." You know, so I said, "All right, I'll come and get you." So I brought, you know, I had a kit in my basement, and I brought my road kit back downstairs, you know, and set that up.
Yeah.
And here we are, two drum sets in my basement, right? And I'm playing it, and I'm looking over, and it's Ansley Dunbar on my
Yeah.
in my basement on my drums, and we're jamming together. You know,
How did it
I couldn't
go?
even look at him, man. You know, it was like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it was wild. You know, so
Wow.
but yeah, it's exhilarating. You know, and
Yeah.
you know, he talks to me. I've called him with you know, issues with bands, you know, and things.
Yeah.
You know, what do you think about this? And he's always to really, he's great. I
Yeah.
love the guy, man.
Wow. That's amazing, man. Now, I want to get into a few of these names because, I looked at your website and I want to direct everybody to Mike Arturi. Is it .net?
.com.
.com, mikearturi.com. That is your website, and there's links if you want to contact Mike or you want to talk to Mike, or if you're interested in possibly donating to this school, because Universal Music Center is a nonprofit and you're doing great work. But I have to ask about Chuck Berry. Please,
Yeah.
please tell me about
Oh
this.
man. Okay. So I was playing in this group called Jade 50s in Chicago, and it was sort of a Shana Naish type thing, you know,
Okay.
50s rock and roll,
Yeah.
and massively popular, major club draw, you know. So that band got picked up by Dick Clark to do the Midwest leg of his rock and roll tours, you know, because
Yeah.
Chuck, you know, and all those guys, they didn't have bands, you know, so
Yeah.
they would just use pickup bands. So um, Dick Clark would use us for the Midwest, right? So
Wow.
the first time I got to play with him wasn't a Dick Clark gig. It was there was a radio convention, and every radio guy in Chicagoland was there. You know,
Wow.
all the air personalities, you know, all the business people and all. So I'm going to play with Chuck Berry, right? You know, by the way, first big name I ever played with, right?
Wow.
And so I get these records, you know, I'm learning all the
Yeah, yeah,
songs
yeah.
and stuff. You know, we go up to his hotel suite for the rehearsal, right? He comes to the door. He came straight from the airport with his stage clothes on, you
Yeah.
know, wild red band like a nylon shirt,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you know, remember those?
I
They
remember
wouldn't
that
breathe.
era. Yeah, it
Yeah,
was the 70s, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Had the Zanzibar red pants, you know, and
Yeah,
the
the
you
red
know,
pants and the polyester shirt like with a wild
yeah,
like
yeah,
color on it.
polyester.
That's that
Yeah,
era of Chuck Berry. Yeah.
yeah. So comes to the door with that outfit on, right? And so, you know, come on in, you know. So we sit. It's got a suite, you know, and there's a big tray of food, and you know, you
Yeah.
didn't even touch it. It's all melting, you know, and everything,
Yeah.
you know. So uh, we sit down and he's talking to us, you know, and I said, "What's going on, fellas?" You know, and we're telling about our band, you know, and how we're doing. We made it. We had made a single at the time, and we told him about that and all that, you know,
Yeah.
and real nice, right? In a split second, his demeanor went from nice to he goes, "Okay, who's the drummer?" You know, I raise my hand. He goes,
Oh.
"All right, when I wave the boxers to stop in the song, when I go like this with my leg, the song's over. Who's the guitar player?" You know, the guy, watch my left hand. This is Chuck Berry music. If you don't know this shit, you shouldn't be here. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to swear.
That's all right.
If you don't know this stuff, you shouldn't be here. You know, okay. So now we're all like, you know,
Yeah.
heightened, right? And he goes, now how you guys doing? And he goes right back to being real nice again.
Wow.
That was the rehearsal.
Yeah. So he
That
didn't yeah, you didn't go over anything.
that long.
Yeah.
That's how long the rehearsal took, right?
Yeah.
So we go down and we play with him, right? And he was telling us his back hurt. He goes, "I'm not going to duck walk today. My back hurts," right? So now I want to ask you and your fans out there and your followers to please understand what I'm about to say actually happened. You know, it's not me pounding my chest, okay?
Yeah.
But he loved me, you know.
Wow.
He like remember, I play loud. I play,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
he loved my backbeat, right?
Yeah.
And he kept turning around and he's into it. You know, he's like
Yeah.
leaning on the drums and he's smiling at me and
Yeah.
we're playing, you know.
Yeah.
And he gets on the mic and he tells the audience, he goes, this drummer is the backbone of rock and roll. He said,
Wow.
yeah, Chuck Berry said that about me,
Wow.
and so afterward, right, you know how you can't let opportunities slip through your
Yeah, yeah.
fingers.
You're like, oh, hey, Chuck.
I go to the house phone, right? Chuck Berry's room, please, and he picks the phone up, you know. And I said, hey, Chuck, this is Mike. I'm the drummer that just played with you. He goes, Mike, you were superb.
Wow.
So I said, man, if you ever need a drummer, he goes, my daughter's working on something, I'll keep you in mind. I never heard from him, but
Yeah, yeah.
I played with him again probably 5 or 6 times, and
Wow.
he was always real cool, and to
Yeah.
me anyway. And I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot of stories of him tearing people apart. Do
Yeah.
you have a second? Can I tell you another
Oh,
Chuck
yeah, yeah,
Berry
yeah,
story?
yeah. We got time.
Um, so I'm real close friends with Bunny Carlos from Cheap Trick,
Oh,
right?
I love him.
And I know a bunch of all of those guys, from I knew them as a bar band, in Chicago.
Wow.
And so I got close with Bunny through Ludwig. And I go out to his place in Rockford and we play double drums and stuff, and old friend. So we were talking about Chuck Berry one time and he goes, yeah, we backed him up, before we had done anything,
Wow.
And he said, he got up on my drum riser. He says, he said, I played a fill and he jumped up on the riser and he leans over and he says to me, smile, and Bunny's like, what? He goes, smile, you know? So Bunny smiles. He goes, you play one more fill like that and I'm throwing you off the stage. He goes, now laugh, you know? And then Bunny's like, ha ha ha, because he wanted the audience to think they were having
Yeah,
this
having a
fun
time.
rapport,
Wow.
So that's Bunny's experience with Chuck.
Wow.
But I just read a book about him, right? Man, he was a groundbreaker.
Oh,
They
yeah.
they talk about in that book, they talk about him shifting from a shuffle, over to a straight eighth note feel.
Yeah.
And they were talking about these drummers, were jazz drummers,
Yeah.
like you listen
Yeah.
to Maybelline, you
Yeah.
know, the drummer's going ding, ding, ka ding, ding, ka ding, ding, ka
Yeah.
ding, ding, ka ding, and you got Willie Dixon playing bass, and
Yeah.
all this, and slowly, by the time of Johnny Be Good, it was da, 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 da,
Yeah. Yeah.
rock and
Yeah.
roll,
Yeah.
what we know is the birth of rock and roll,
Yeah.
because you think about it, um, in the 40s, there was this music, which I'm sure you and all
Yeah.
your fans know, called boogie woogie,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
This is Louis Jordan, Cab Calloway, these type of people.
Yeah.
These guys were 8-piece, 5-piece, 8-piece bands, pared down from the big band era,
Yeah. Yeah.
And Ike Turner was another one, think of Rocket 88, that
Yep.
record, Rocket 88.
Yep.
So that was like just about rock and roll. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That was 49,
Transition.
1948, 49, 50,
Yeah.
you know, by 53, here it comes,
Yeah. Yeah. And
So,
it is, it's like really the blueprint, it went from the big band. And then, like you said, now you put that transition thing of that boogie woogie, which I hadn't thought of that. But then it gets pared down to guitar, frontman, bass, drums.
drums. Yep.
And that's the Crickets, that's Elvis, that's now Little Richard would have a bigger band. He would have, piano and he'd have a sax and some stuff like that. But Gene Vincent with the guitar, bass, and drums and the front man,
Yeah.
that is the blueprint, for Jailhouse Rock is the blueprint for Led Zeppelin,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. And that came from the blues. Rock and
Yeah,
roll is blues, country, gospel, and jazz, right?
yeah, yeah,
So that was the setup of a blues band,
yeah,
you know. And you take a harmonica, there's your horn section,
yeah, yeah,
maybe you got a piano player, but
yeah,
so yeah, it's pretty. Hey, man, this is interesting because here we are. This is the beginning, and we were already talking about where we are now with the dancers and the tracks and all this
yeah,
stuff. You know, listen to any Chuck Berry record. Those are guys playing right then
yeah.
and there into the
It's
microphone.
real, man. And
Yeah,
you could hear, like the thing I always liked about, I like the mistakes in some things. I like hearing the amp bleed into the vocal mic. I like hearing at the end of the a Stone song, and you hear a guy goes far out, man.
Yeah, yeah,
You just I would put headphones on and go, no, which one of them said that? The album Exile on Main Street, and it's recorded in some French chalet, in a basement, a Keith
yeah,
Richards basement, and half the time people were nodding off, and they'd wake up in the middle of the night and record these songs and then pass out all day.
yeah.
It's real, it's real, and it has a vibe. It's not just some guy with a laptop.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then think about all the bands, in all the basements and all the garages, um, when when you start playing with artists, when you start playing with people with names who are renowned and stuff, you come to realize, I've noticed two things. One being most of these guys know a ton of songs. Most of these guys own a million records. You know, they know B-sides, they know all this
Yeah,
crazy stuff, So they're real, they're real guys, they're real students of this stuff, and
yeah,
not knowing how to read a note of music, or any of that.
yeah,
They know songs.
yeah.
Um, so that's something that's really important. I don't know, man. I find it all just really exciting and fascinating.
It is. It's now, and that's why it's important. Like having you on here is adding a piece of the puzzle. You telling that story about Chuck Berry, this is history. And man, if you don't tell these stories, they're gone. When we pass, these stories are gone, and this is marking down moments in time and moments in history. And everybody interviews, the guys that are on Jimmy Kimmel or whatever. Everybody gets to talk to them, but nobody gets to really get in depth with guys like you and me who were just out there just friggin' doing it, trying to pay our mortgage each month. You were the road manager and drummer, right? Because you had to advance the dates. You had to make sure there were two twin reverbs and a Ludwig drum kit and a bass amp and the right keyboard and all that stuff. And there's so much wisdom that can be gained from learning us vets, and I think that's a huge part of why my channel is doing so well, because there's a lot of guys like you and me who played these gigs and are playing some of them are 70 years old and they're still playing gigs or writing songs or doing stuff. And people, this is the time for us old guys to share our wisdom.
I agree. Um, if I could back up for one quick second, I kind of lost what I was going to make 2 points about these guys who owning a bunch of records and stuff.
Yeah,
But also, when you play with them, if you took away that name, you know, it's a guy. It's
yeah,
just a guy that plays the guitar. Uh, you could bury 90% of them. But they got a thing. And
yeah,
they
got a
got these
thing.
records. And like the Stones. I used to ask Aynsley, I said, man, was there anyone in Liverpool that didn't become famous? You know, and he goes, oh yeah, there was tons of bands, tons of bands that were great, that never made it. So it's just who knows, I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
and also too, how about these guys, that get 3 or 4 hits, when they're 22, 23 years old, and for the rest of their lives, you know,
yeah,
they're playing those songs. Not that there's
yeah,
anything wrong with that, but
yeah,
it messes them up just enough to where
yeah,
they can't go get another career,
yeah,
and have a steady income and have
yeah,
health insurance,
yeah,
and own a home and a car and get married and have a life because
yeah,
they got these records, and these gigs keep coming in,
yeah,
and they could pocket $1,500 or 2 grand or something to to
yeah,
go out and play for 60 minutes,
yeah,
and you know what I'm saying? It just
yeah.
messes them up just enough.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff that I talk about on my channel that are exactly like there was one video I just did. It got 15,000 views,
Wow.
and it's just me walking through my, little park around my neighborhood and talking about, knowing when to leave the party, and don't forget to grab a hand on the way out of the party and go and try and start a life, try and start a family, try to have something to come home to, because we're striving to make it in the music business, but the reality is there is no such thing as making it. And even if you do have hits, you're just going to be expected to relive your past the rest of your life. But if you have to keep coming home alone and you have nothing to show for it, all those platinum records on your wall, once you're dead, no one's going to even know who you were.
Yeah. Even when you're alive, those records in $1 aren't going to get you a cup of coffee,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah,
Now, hey, wish I had one.
yeah,
I'll say that for sure. I wish I had a gold record.
yeah,
But um, yeah, it's pretty wild, man. Uh, the thing about you're talking about stability and stuff, and leaving the park. I think the party shut down a long time ago. I mean, you're younger than me, but when I was coming up in Chicago, you could work 5 nights a week, every week for years.
yeah,
All the generations of musicians prior to me sent kids to college, bought homes, bought cars, playing in Chicago,
yeah,
not even going on the road.
yeah,
You know, there was pit bands and shows, Broadway shows and stuff,
yeah,
plays and things. There was corporate events, there were
yeah,
weddings, there were
yeah,
rock bands, there were dump bars, corner bars,
yeah,
there was lounges, there was every hotel had an act,
yeah,
had a band
yeah,
in it 5 6 nights a week, you
yeah.
know, and that's all gone now,
It's all gone.
and now there's no more. We signed a record deal, and we got an
Yeah,
advance, and we're going to make a record. That's
yeah,
gone, you
yeah,
know. So now this is what I tell all these parents of students ask me about this because, you know, little Johnny, he's got it, man. And he's playing his guitar and he's happening, man. And now all of a sudden, him and two other guys from the neighborhood got a band together and they're playing in the parking lot at the VFW. And mom and dad are all excited because look at what he's doing. He's playing, and
yeah,
they're going to pay him for this and stuff. And they start asking me, what do we do with this? So I tell them nowadays, I think that the real thing nowadays is writing original music and self-publishing. And you can do that anytime. You could
yeah,
do that and still have some sort of a career. And also, there's a billion music industry related careers that you could get into.
yeah,
I
yeah,
know a guy that we played for this promoter, Joe Mirioni, great guy, man. And he puts on these shows, these doo-wop shows on the East Coast. And he's got a house band, and the drummer in that band, Jeff, he's a musical instrument rep, right? And he plays all these concerts, these big concerts. He's now doing a tour right now with this the leader of that house band has a Christmas show with four like doo-wop singers, So they do like 32 Christmas songs, or Christmas shows, and
yeah,
and he's out calling on clients while he's touring, you know.
yeah,
So there's all this work,
yeah,
that's music industry related.
yeah,
I put
yeah,
my school together,
yeah,
I'm in music education now,
yeah, yeah,
and I draw a salary. I draw a wage every 2 weeks. I get a
yeah,
paycheck from my school,
yeah, yeah.
um, so there's a lot going on. I'm a teaching artist for this Compass Arts organization and also the John F. Kennedy Center Turnaround Arts Program. And I go into all these, I work with all kinds of million different populations, people with all sorts of mental and physical challenges, special needs kids, halfway houses, prisons, all this stuff. I do for the 6th year now. I'm going into this juvenile correctional facility, and I do a music program in there. And
Wow.
so there's all kinds of stuff, that you could
Yeah,
do and make good money at,
yeah,
and come home at night,
yeah.
you know.
That's the clinker right there. And this is where I want to get talk about Universal Music Center. Is that universalmusiccenter.com? Is that it?
Org. It's .org.
.org. Okay, universalmusiccenter.org, and that is that's kind of your home base. And this, great thing that you're doing, you're bringing music to people in different situations, and you're finding that it's helping people, and you're bringing music to kids and old people, and that is an amazing thing. And that's, I talk to a lot of people that have experience about the music business, but you've actually found a way to help people. And I
Hmm.
think that's important as we get later on in life. It's not our job to be prancing around the stage and doing this. It's our time to mentor people and help people and guide people that have. I got 28-year-old kids say, "Hey man, I'm 28. Is it too late? Like what should I do?" I said, "Well, if you go to Nashville, 28's not over the hill. But if you go to LA, you're done."
Yeah.
Just
So
simple
true.
stuff like
It's so
that.
true,
But
man.
tell us a little bit about Universal Music Center, and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay. Well, as I was saying, I decided that I wanted to, it's funny you mentioned what you just did because that's how the whole thing started. I thought I gave my life to this stuff. I gave my entire life to this stuff. So I helped my son. I taught my son how to play the drums. I gave him 3 or 4 lessons and he blasted off on his own. He's phenomenal. But I thought, what can I need to do something with what I gave my life to.
Yeah,
So I thought I just want to help people.
yeah,
And that was that simple. It was that simple, that I
yeah.
just want to I want to share what I gave my life to with anyone who I can help. And and that's what motivated me. And one thing led to another. And I make a joke, I work half a day, 12 hours,
Yeah.
12 hours a day, you know, um, every day, man.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
year, um, I've had maybe 4 weekends where I've been home in town without a major obligation.
Yeah.
The rest of the year I've worked 7 days a week.
Yeah.
Now I'm not complaining. I'm grateful
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah.
And I work hard at building this, and I'm committed to it.
Yeah.
Um, I'm involved in the community here. I'm a commissioner for the Arts and Culture Commission here in Red Wing where I live. Um, it was an odd thing how this came together because I was still living in Chicago when I was starting to put this idea together,
Yeah.
and we moved out here. Same thing with me. My wife, had a
Yeah.
career opportunity here, and found all this art in this community. There's painters, sculptors, all this stuff. No
Wow.
music. So
Yeah.
I thought maybe this will work. And then one thing led to another, and I was advised to make it a nonprofit, and it's just been a gift from God, man. It's really
Wow.
been something.
That's amazing. That is amazing, man. Well, I'm going to put the links to your social, your website and Universal Music Center in the description of this video. I'm going to have one quick lightning round. Give me your top 5 rock and roll drummers of all time and begin.
Ansley Dunbar, John Bonham, Ringo Starr, Jim Keltner, Keith Moon.
Love it. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you so much, Brad.
Man,
So great to see you. And congratulations. I'm so proud of you, man.
thank you. And we'll do this again.
I'd love to anytime.
All right, brother. You have a great night.
All right, you too. Thank
Thank
you.
you, man. See ya.
Okay, bye.
Bye.